I literally thought that when you take your keys off, that I could lose them somehow by putting them on this memory stick. I was like, I'll just leave it on Coinbase. It seems safe to me, but little did I know how easy it is to pull your keys off. Unfortunately, you end up having to pay an attorney. How do you feel about it now? Looks like Bitcoin, screwed you over, Tony. Everybody should not be doing two-factor. They should be using, a YubiKey. The part that pissed me off the most was it wasn't the money. It was, hey, how many Saturdays did I give up to go work and miss my kids' games? What I find very interesting about friends and family is they'll form an opinion on something they know nothing about. I sat there and I was like, how am I going to retire one day?
What do you think inspires especially real estate people that come from that kind of career to get inspired to get into Bitcoin?
Well, for myself, I'm 47 years old. I've been doing real estate and commercial real estate, just focusing on industrial for 25 years. I worked the Seattle market, and at the time that I got into it, I'm dealing with people that are family, local investment, just local owners that own all of this, real estate, and they're the landlords, and they, lease it out to the local companies and then also national companies. And over the span of, you had my first 10 years, all locally owned real estate. It felt like there was very few institutional ownerships in Seattle, specifically industrial. And then the last 10 years of my career in Seattle, it had flip-flopped. It had all gone over to institutional money. And, you quickly see, how a local investor, local individual values real estate versus an institution. And, local people, all they care about is the cash flow. They never pushed too hard on rents when the leases would come up, because they sat there and they said, hey, this company, this group, they pay rent on time. They take care of my building, and I don't get any phone calls on the weekend, kind of a thing. And it was usually a pretty friendly negotiation between the tenant and the landlord. And then, but I wouldn't call them a professional landlord. Okay. And then you have this new group that comes in 2008, 2009. And while you're seeing, companies close and a crisis happen, you're seeing all this new money just flood into the market. And it doesn't make any sense because they're paying numbers that we had never seen before. And you're like, look around, man. I mean, the market's crashing. What is going on here? You start seeing these institutions paying for vacant buildings. And that doesn't make any sense, because kind of the golden rule that I grew up with was, who can pay the most for a vacant building? It was always an owner user, because they can make that building work with the oddities and whatnot of it, and they'll pay the most for it. But when you start seeing the institutions come into town and paying, astronomical numbers, and every time it just kept jacking up more and more and more. And, it was quite amazing, because these guys, all they care about is the highest price per square foot. And so then that, jacks up the building value. Well, a local investor, he sat there and he's like, hey, I know my value of my building. I don't need to keep pushing the rent as hard. They just looked at it as a slow and steady bond. And so, you're seeing your career and your job, going in this direction. And then as you're learning about Bitcoin in parallel course, you're just going like, what is going on here? And, you see the effects of the rents, doubling, tripling, quadrupling. And, it's great, I guess, if you own a building and that's your exit strategy, all of a sudden you're sitting there going, hey, I thought my building was worth $3 million. And someone comes in with an unsolicited offer and, is giving you, $4 million, $5 million. You're just like, well, I never even knew my building was worth this. And you saw this time and time again. And, towards the end of my career, I sat there and just was like, hey, don't sell this building. Let's just renew the tenant, keep this building in your family portfolio, because your kids will never be able to duplicate this again. I mean, these institutions aren't going to be selling these things. They just sell to another institution. And for you and I to buy a building like this, it doesn't make sense as an individual anymore. And so that's really where, you're just questioning everything, and you're busy at work, you got your head down, and then you kind of put your head up above the water and you're like, what's going on here? And then you just say, oh, okay, this must be just unique to my market. And you're like, no. Then you go down every industry and you just see like where money has broken into things. And anyways, it just kind of goes right along with your Bitcoin education.
Amazing. And let's stay a little bit on real estate. Where do you see the market going with Bitcoin growing and potentially demonetizing the real estate market?
Where where do I see the market like headed right like this second? I would have told you in 2014. I had two partners, and we just couldn't believe the where the pricing had gotten to in 2014. And I mean, you can only say, I mean, I've been saying the market's frothy since then. Like this is crazy. We've never seen numbers like this. How does it go any higher? And then when you talk to other people in the market and say they're not an institution, they're just like they can't believe the numbers. Like it can't go any higher. Let's sell right now. Like I don't want to buy. It's at the highest it's ever been. We don't want to buy at the height of the market. Well, that was 10 years ago. And so it was, I just read something today, this morning, that, finally the Inland Empire down in California, one of the largest, industrial markets in United States, finally has seen the rent growth just kind of level out, take a little bit of a dip, but not the kind of dip that I would expect, for just economics looking at it, mathematics. It's still very, very, very high. Um, and it works right in with the inflation that we're seeing right now, because a lot of these, all these companies, they just pass that rent cost back to you and I, the consumer. So, I would have expected it to come down quite some time ago. But I don't think that's the case. I keep, in my mind, I think it will, but I don't know, because at the same time, where else is, I mean, while it is an, illiquid asset, where else, for these guys that are in a fiat mind, they're sitting there saying, where else, what's the best store of my value, or, for my money? And, real estate is still at, one of the key assets where they're sticking their money. So I, I, I think these guys will keep plugging along until, something breaks.
Yeah, definitely. And it's also for me interesting when I think of what would I do right now if there would not been Bitcoin. Before Bitcoin, I did a lot of stock investing, but honestly, I right now, if Bitcoin would be just gone, I would
Right.
definitely do something with real estate. Real estate has, especially in Austria, I don't know how it is with you, amazing tax benefits. You can do a lot
Yes.
with it. And you can even, like, if you don't want to be just like in Austria, you can diversify and do it in different countries. Yeah, every holiday there can be a tax benefit, stuff like that. So like you can do a lot with real estate, and it's a great asset if there's not Bitcoin. And then
Right.
there is like my thinking, because I would be probably one that would put money into real estate and propping up the market if there's no Bitcoin. Right now, I'm 100% in Bitcoin. And if we are thinking long term, like not the next 5, 10 years, when we think the next 50, 100 years, where Bitcoin is growing stronger and is growing better and better as a store of value, and yeah, sucking out financial energy from people that's been in the real estate market, like Gary Cardone just posted a picture of
I saw that.
his mega mansion, and he's like, I'm
Yeah.
selling it for Bitcoin and Bitcoin only. Like
Right.
he's directly flooding the gates from real estate to Bitcoin. And it is interesting how like this will shape out long term. Of course, when we measure it in US dollars, I think real estate will always go up because the US dollars will crash
Right.
down. But then you have the minds shift with like, let's measure it real estate in Bitcoin, and then everything goes
Absolutely.
down. Like, and that was like kind of my aim for the question. Like, how do you see it like really long term? Does this real estate come really down to kind of a utility value when people stop like saving in it? I don't know how this is with you, but in Austria, a lot of people misuse real estate to just like have their life savings in it.
Yeah. Well, and that's I think they do that, with with housing out here. They use that as their savings account. But that has
Mm,
been, that's been preached to us since the beginning of time. And it's, I remember, someone telling me, hey, it's a forced savings account. And I mean, that clicked with me. But then again, that just for that example, it was a little investment. And, just a few years ago, I sat there and I thought, well, hey, it feels like we're at the height here. I'm, going to sell it. And, everybody's like, well, what else are you going to put it into, Tony? And I'm like, well, how about you learn some Bitcoin and you'll see where I'm going to put this. And that's what I've done. And as you get more and more orange pilled, so that's very cool to hear that, Gary, and see that on Twitter when he posted that yesterday. It's a massive house. I mean, it's a very nice house in Florida, but he'll be able to buy a lot of Bitcoin with that money.
yeah, and it will be also interesting how it influences Grant Cardone, like the just
Right.
from like an influential point of view, Grant Cardone is the one with higher following and stuff like that. I don't know like other metrics, who owns more and stuff like that, but just from his following, I think Grant Cardone getting into Bitcoin community would be like the bigger boom effect. So it will be interesting to see what's going on with Grant Cardone. What's also interesting, like how did like your background in real estate influence your thinking of Bitcoin? Like how did your unique view with real estate and background and what you did in the like fiat world influence your thinking of how you view Bitcoin?
Well, I mean, it's, one, you sit there and you sit there. I mean, like the biggest thing was, uh, for me was just like when you're advising somebody, you're just like, hey, this is a great investment. This is how the mechanics of this work. Here's how the cash flows work. But then if you need that money, say in a pinch, it is very, very illiquid unless you actually, dump the price. And so like that, that's a big one for me. The one that I'm still trying to, you know, uh, learn about and get through my head is just I've grown up in a world where you're building these models on investments, for cash flow, and Bitcoin, doesn't have cash flow. And so, when talk to, you know, my old partners and stuff, and they can't wrap their head around that kind of a thing. And
Mm.
that'll be, but that's what I'm working on, in my head right now, is just like, I always start and there's like, well, what's the cash flow in this thing? Well, there is no cash flow. But it just, continues to go up. And like you say, our purchasing power just continues to go up in it.
Yeah, this was also like my problem. I had 3 years I needed from 2017 where I heard it first. I was like 18 or 19 back then. And then I needed till 2020 to get from it's a scam to I invest my
Right.
first money in that. Like, because I was in the Warren Buffett mindset, stock investor,
Yeah.
all like stock investor as a real estate investor also needs a cash flow
Right.
as a back thing. And I was like,
Absolutely.
PE, I need a cash flow. Where this
Right.
going? What's the future? And like I needed the kick of a friend of mine that kept asking me, "Hey, what do you think of the Bitcoin thingy?" Because I was quite good with the stocks, and he was like, "Ah, what do you think of Bitcoin?" And then I said it's a scam for 3 years, and at some point the arguments ran out, and I was like,
Right.
"Let's dive deep into Bitcoin. Let's prove my friend wrong."
Right.
And in trying to prove him wrong, I actually discovered Bitcoin, bought my first Bitcoin like 3 days afterwards and stuff like that. And it's always interesting what people and families and friends circle then say. For me, it was not that interesting because I was really young, so I had not like a lot of history. How did your like family and friend circle with all the interesting headlines, what's going on with Bitcoin, say when you said like you're focusing more and more on Bitcoin?
Well, I fell into it just, everybody's got a unique story. And, I simply wanted to bet on some football games. I had three kiddos that I was staying home with on the weekends with my wife, and we had a baby. And I was like, well, I want to watch football on Saturday and Sunday. And so it's like, well, I want to learn more about football and not just be a spectator. And I was like, okay, let's try gambling on it. And so I had to get the Bitcoin. I mean, I just looked at it as a token, just exchange your money in this token, then use that token to bet. And I found out real quick after about 3 weeks, like I have no business gambling with, I think I had bought a Bitcoin and a half, and then I'd won a Bitcoin, lost a Bitcoin, and I was just like, I don't have, you know, the dough to be spending 500, 750 bucks on gambling on a weekend. So I quit that, and then you hear about it again. And you said you got into it in 2017?
No, 2020, unfortunately.
Oh,
2017,
okay.
where first heard it, and then 2020 I got
Okay.
into
So I then started hearing about it again in 2017, and that's when I was like, well, what the hell? I think I have one of these things. And that's really when I started, and so I had bought it for $485 or something like that. And then it quickly went up to, I don't know, maybe it hit 5,000 bucks. And I was like, awesome. I'm going to go buy a new stereo. I was like, I'm going to go buy a whole bunch of Sonos speakers, rip out to Best Buy. I went and bought the Sonos speakers. I come home and I was, telling my wife, and she's like, all right, so you sold the Bitcoin. And at that point, I'd thought about it a little bit more. I was like, well, why would I sell it if I'm only into it for 450 bucks or whatever it was? So I was like, I'll just hold on to it for a little bit more. And at that point, that also drove my education. Like, what the hell is this? This isn't just simply a token. And so then I did 2017. I would come home from work and it would be, 1 to 3 hours a day. And I didn't listen to podcasts at that time. I was just listening to YouTube. And, you're all excited about that. And you're like, well, there's got to be what's the next token that's going to, crank up, and you see number go up. And then, I was trying to remember who it was. It was probably like Max and Stacy that just kept harping, just get rid of all that other shit and just focus on Bitcoin. And I did. And I'm super happy that I did. And then it was awesome. I'd come home and again spend 1 to 3 hours. And if it was a good, episode, it'd be like, all right, well, let's smash by 50 bucks. Let's smash by 1,000 bucks. And then, and as you in real estate, you're all commissioned. So it's like, hey, I got a good deal here. All right, let's buy 5,000, 10,000. And it was a lot of fun. My wife, uh, sat there and was just like, what the hell are you getting into here? And I wish I would have had, instead of, watching it on my phone or iPad, I wish I would have had it, on the TV so she could have listened to and been orange pilled at the same time. Uh, but anyways, that's how I got into it. And I still need to orange pill her. She's about 90% there, but it's, it's still, I got SIM swapped in 2021. And so that was a big blow, uh, that was partly my fault, partly AT&T, partly Coinbase, right? I'll take a little bit of responsibility for it. But that was a big blow to her. She's like, well, Bitcoin failed. And I was like, no, Bitcoin didn't fail. One, I had my two factor, and it's, AT&T, failed me, and Coinbase failed me. But at that point in 2021, that's when I really dove down the rabbit hole and just, before that I was scared. I literally thought that when you take your keys off, that I could lose them somehow by putting them on this memory stick. That's what I remember thinking. Oh, there's a memory stick. Like, what if this thing breaks? I lose my Bitcoin. I was like, I'll just leave it on Coinbase. They use the same two factor as Bank of America. I was like, it seems safe to me, but little did I, know how easy it is to pull your keys off. And two, just how unsafe it is. And they, when I preached it, it's like I knew in my head, it's, not your keys, not your Bitcoin. So, it's a fucking IOU. And so, anyways, I, went down. I remember reading one of, I think it was Kira Bicker's books. And she has a real great book that just, it kind of broke down the technical aspect, so I could understand it. And I built my, first node at that time, and just really started, becoming a real maximalist. And I'm very proud of it now. I mean, so yeah, I don't wish that I would have lost all that. But at the same time, it helped with my education, and so here I am now. But I did get my value back. We sued AT&T and T and Coinbase, and we were
Mm.
successful. But unfortunately, you end up having to, pay an attorney, and he did a great job, and so I'm not bitching about that. But it just, I wasn't expecting to be paying that kind of money to an attorney. I thought I'd be having that money, but anyways, it's part of the education for myself. But here I am now.
For the people that don't know what is SIM swapped, it's like a hacking attack on your phone.
Yeah, so they go in, and it's quite coordinated. They usually do it over a long weekend, a Christmas break or a Thanksgiving break, here in the States. And we were having Thanksgiving. We had just moved, had all family coming out and everything like that. And I go to use my phone, and it, my phone says, no service. And I was like, I don't really need my phone right now anyways. I'm preparing for Thanksgiving. I'm running around getting oysters and, just getting the party supplies, all that stuff. So I was like, forget it. Come home that night, and, you find out that your Bitcoin is gone. You're like, what the hell is this? Like, what happened? And they end up getting basically the info on your phone to then log, log into your account, and then change all your passwords so you can't log into any of your, Coinbase accounts. And then you're totally locked out. And then it goes over the break. So then AT&T or your phone carriers have different hours, and everybody has different hours. And um, yeah, it was awful.
Yeah,
Um,
that's and that's why I also.
but Yeah, no, no one ever needs to go through it. It's a gut wrenching deal. It was hard on my family. It was hard on myself, mentally. And, you want to sit there and you want to tell back to your one question of, telling your friends and family, no, Bitcoin is it, guys. Like jump on. And then they sit there and ask me, it's like, well, how do you feel about it now? Looks like Bitcoin, screwed you over, Tony. And I was like, no, no, so it made me really understand Bitcoin. And, and that's where I always thought, like, one Coinbase, I never got to talk to those guys. They're a shitty company. They're awful. I mean, the customer service was terrible. Like I said, I had to hire an attorney just to get them to pick up the phone, kind of a thing.
Mm.
Um, but but yeah, no, everybody should not be doing two factor. They should be using, a YubiKey, which is awesome, or they should be using an authenticator, or even better yet, they should take their next level and take their phone and switch it over to like a cloaked wireless. And then there's another company, I can't remember the name of it, but, Cloak Wireless just launched, maybe a month ago, and it really does eliminate the SIM swapping ability. But Yeah, and when they do sim swap you, it's a big coordinated event. It's not like just one person's doing it. I mean, there's a few people involved. So, and the part that pissed me off the most was it wasn't the money. It was, hey, how many Saturdays did I give up to go work and miss my kids' games? How many late, nights did I stay late? It was like, it really was. I did not equate it to money. I equated it to you guys stole my energy, and I was pissed. So, anyways,
Hmm. Yeah,
sorry, go on a little rant, but get your keys off, secure your stuff, and it's no joke.
yeah, definitely. And it's like I I always try to hammer this point down. Take your self custody serious. Like there's easy stuff to get into with self custody. There are solutions. I even have a sponsor with BitBox. You have a link down in the description. But there are so many hardware wallets. There's so many different solutions you can do. You can do it yourself, even with just like there's really a lot you can do with self custody, and there's no
Hmm.
reason why you should not do it, and there's thousands of reasons why you should do it. Like even
Right,
if Coinbase and your exchange is not going broke and is not gonna rip rip you apart like FTX or something like that,
right,
there can be, like in your case, a hacker. There can be so many other things, like even it's like I don't want to get on a rant too much, but there are like self custody. I don't know why I got it really early. Like in the first week that I got Bitcoin, I also bought my first back then a ledger, and got since then always self custody and never had it on exchange.
right.
But this is something I try to educate everybody on. But let's come a little bit back to
Okay.
your family, a little bit back to your family. What do you think is the biggest misconceptions that people have? Maybe also your wife has, but maybe also like other people in your life that you see.
Just that it's a scam, and at any time I'm going to be rug pulled, and that's really they haven't put the time in. They listen to the traditional news. There, I it's and so did I. I mean, truly, I didn't get a Twitter account until I can't, maybe it was 2020 or 21, and if it wasn't for that, I mean, that's where you meet this entire community. And there's a ton of people out there that'll help. And there's also, just people giving away free education every day. I've had sessions or not sessions, I've booked sessions with Bitcoin sessions before. He's helped me, just answering a bunch of questions. You go to, and then just reading books. I mean, but yeah, my family, they still sit there. I mean, I've kind of been vindicated a little bit, with the price action, but it's hard to tell them that this thing solves so many problems that they are bitching about and are concerned about. And it's just, you try to tell them, simply like, hey, this changes the incentives across the board, and it doesn't click. You have to put in the work, and it sounds, like I said, and maybe it's not that interesting to some of my family members because it hasn't totally affected them yet in their life, but I don't see how it's not where everybody, I mean, you just see where we're at today, and then you just, you go to the grocery store or go get gas, whatever. I mean, I would think that they would be, I would think I'd be getting more phone calls. uh, but I haven't, it's just more of them like, hey, I see your Bitcoin's back up. And I even talked to, like old colleagues, and they just, oh, we're into the video. We're still, really into Amazon and, whatever stocks. And oh, Bitcoin's still around, Bitcoin's still a thing. And you're just, I mean, that's just, up 2, 3 weeks ago, I got that comment. And these are from very, very smart people that handle, a lot of money, for other individuals. And it's just, but as this continues to grow, I mean, those people will finally have to, I hope, finally just say, hey, what is this? Just kind of like I did in 2017, like, what the hell do I have here? Or what the hell is Bitcoin, and try to figure it out.
Yeah, there's this magic 10% S curve point adoption coming, where when we have Bitcoin being there for a really long time, like 15, 20 years, where we're approaching it now, like, 15 years, but like between this time, and then like around 10% of the population adopted it, more and more, like in every family there's some Bitcoiner in there that can educate. If we hit like a certain amount of adoption and the
Yep.
price is starting to run up, this FOMO that we saw in 2017, a little bit in 2021, can have a, a drastically different shape and a drastically different force when we hit it now, because so many
Right.
more education pieces are out there. Like 2017, I always, like, I was not there, but like I was there, but not
Right.
as someone that looks into Bitcoin. It was not, there was no Twitter in that round that is here like right now. There was no 20 Bitcoin only podcast that tell about that stuff. There was
Right.
more education there than there was like in 2013, 2011. Major respect to people that got into so early and stick with it. But the more educators are out there, the more Bitcoiners are out there, the more those price run-ups really make a difference, because all of a
Yeah.
sudden people are like, wait, this Bitcoin thing is still around, and now it's like, it was at 10,000, then it was 2,000, now it's like 200,000.
Right.
What's going on there? And those small effects, and those, like, even you being in your life as one of the Bitcoin guys in the family, it's like one Bitcoin point in the lives of your circle, which they will then go back, like when it's coming to like 100,000 or 150,000 or like 500,000, they will call you.
What I find very interesting about, I agree with you, and what I find very interesting about friends and family is they'll form an opinion on something they know nothing about. And I mean, you see that on Twitter all the time. It's like these people are chiming in and they just haven't spent any time, and they've got their opinion, and they're just like, no, you're wrong, Tony. You this. And you're just like, God. So I really, I've taken a step back. I can't, I mean, when, it's just like everybody, when they get that aha moment, you're like one of the guys on the corner with a megaphone just shouting, just like, hey, guess what? I found this, guys. This is it. This is the path. Let's jump on here. I've done the homework. Just here, let's go. And it's, it's almost like they feel like I'm selling them something. And it's like, so I had to take a step back and just, I don't really talk about it unless they talk to me about it.
I told you a lot about 21 Bitcoin, the best place for me to buy Bitcoin directly on a Bitcoin only exchange. But now let's talk about how to secure your Bitcoin. Once you got Bitcoin, you don't want to leave them on exchange. You want to take self custody. You want to take responsibility of your own Bitcoin. That's why I recommend getting a BitBox. BitBox is an amazing wallet where you can not only keep your Bitcoin in a simple way, very secure, you can even create a passphrase. With that passphrase, you can basically create a hidden wallet on the device itself. Make sure to buy your BitBox in the link down in the description, and with code Robin, you even get a 5% discount. And there's this amazing movie scene that was turned into a meme now, where the guy is saying, come onto the ark, come onto the ark. And then there's like rain, and people are like, it's just a little rain. Then the rain stops and everybody laughs at him. And then the dam breaks.
Yeah.
The water is really coming down. And then
Right.
all of a sudden, everybody comes onto the ark. And I think we at some point will hit this point. I don't know if we hit it this year or in 5 years. The timing can be difficult, but there will be this
Very.
inflection point where, like, the adoption curve, the price run up,
Yep.
the everything is coming into like the perfect storm for Bitcoin. And even if it does not come, then it's like a slow progression, which would be probably better, because like I always make this example of the Titanic sinking. You want to have the Titanic sinking slowly, that people can get on the life raft with Bitcoin.
Right.
Because when Bitcoin runs up to 10 million, this also means the US dollar and the fiat system really crashes down in a major way, which also
Oh,
has indications that are really bad for society.
It absolutely. And what, when people do ask me about it, I just like, at some point you're going to have to jump on this network. So you might as well be early and be rewarded. If not, hey, okay, you'll still get to use a great network, but you will be forced to get on this at some point here. And, it has, in my mind, you're just like, thought that this would happen a lot sooner just because it makes so much sense to me and to, everybody else that's in it. But it has been slower. But it makes for a much softer landing when things are starting to break. And that's what I try to tell them is you're going to want to have some of this because when the dam breaks, it's going to be a problem and people are just going to be scrambling. And anyways,
Definitely.
have a soft
Well,
landing.
when you look back in the life before Bitcoin, like before 2017 or 2020, when you got Bitcoin, what did like change about your money mindset? I think like sound money can change a lot in your brain if you don't have the mindset before. Some even had like the Austrian mindset before, but what
Right.
did something change in your view?
It's one, I was just like probably like a lot of people, you start making money, but you're not saving money. I wasn't spending more money than I was making, but I didn't, I'm sitting there just spending just as much as I make. And then, and even if I wasn't, I sat there and I was like, how am I going to retire one day, especially living in Seattle? And everything was just you have all these questions like how is you just boom just question after question. How are my kids going to live here? What job are my kids going to do to be able to afford to live in this life? And you're like, okay, I'll worry about it tomorrow. I'll worry about it tomorrow. And well, it's today. You need to worry about that stuff today. And when Bitcoin came, you're just like it's one of those things where I think I would understand it, and I was like, no, this is impossible. There's nothing out there this good that can help solve a lot of these problems. And and I just there's too many moving parts to it. And, you think you understand it, and then I'd lose a portion. I was like, I'd question something. But I've always questioned money. I never you just, I guess I always questioned credit. I didn't quite understand how that worked. And, so anyways, it's as I found Bitcoin, you have a ha ha moment for all these different little things, and leads you to where you are now.
Mm. Do you have, and this is also interesting for me because I'm quite young. Like I came into Bitcoin when basically my life started. Like, like my Bitcoin, like 4 years ago, I was like 21. So like my life basically just started out.
Right.
But you are now near 50, like you're 47.
Yeah.
Do you have like a life lesson, that you had before Bitcoin that like now got really reinforced, with your involvement in Bitcoin? Something that you can share?
Well, so let's let me think about that one. Repeat the question one more time, and let me write this
Um,
thing down so I really, because there's like it's like there's so many. It's like, well, what is like the main one? But go ahead, give me that question again so I really hammer this down.
the question is like, do you have a life lesson, which has been reinforced with your involvement in Bitcoin?
Yes, I when I started, when I found Bitcoin, it just, like I said, I was never a saver, but all of a sudden it just made sense to absolutely start saving. And I mean, it's one of these things where you, uh, you just want to stack as much as you absolutely possibly can. And I've
Mm.
never had that in my life before. I always knew, my dad was always like, he was an accountant. And he's like, you got to save, Tony. You got to save. You got to save. And I was like, well, you got to have fun too, Dad. And then but I never did follow through on any of that. And then, thank God that I found Bitcoin because I have been a saver and I'm proud to be a saver and it feels good. But I've never done that. So, my life lesson is I was supposed to be saving from, as a life lesson from my parents, and I never did. And then with Bitcoin, I absolutely started saving. So, and it's, I think that I know my kids will. Um, I talk with them about Bitcoin quite a bit. Like I said, I
Mhm.
can't talk about I've been banned talking about Bitcoin with my wife for a while. It's, I don't really care about the number, but she's got a number in her mind where once it hits that, then I'm allowed to talk about it in the family again with her.
That's good. And I mean, I have a podcast which is daily, and my girlfriend also doesn't get Bitcoin to 100%. So
Right,
she has her satoshis in her wallet because I gifted them to her. So
right.
I can say that my girlfriend has Bitcoin, but she didn't get it till now. And I think I'm like picking episodes where I'm like, this one you have to listen to like every like 3 weeks or something like that, because
Right.
I'm aware she cannot listen to every episode. It's like 1 hour a day, but like hand picked like that and that episode you should listen to because I'm like maybe she's resonating with the guest more on that level, and that's how I try to do it. But it's hard. Like and I
Yeah.
don't want to force anything onto her. Like she will be on her own learning path.
Yeah, I've done the same thing. I remember coming down to Miami in 22, and I went down there one just to validate, like, am I going crazy? Are these people for real? Are there, who is this big group? And anyways, I was super impressed with the attendees, and I couldn't wait to, come back and tell her about it. But, I picked a couple of uh, the talks on stage and that I thought that she would love, and it was really, like, hey, it's not just numbers. Don't look at it just from the U.S., our U.S. standpoint. Think about if you're over, in Africa where you've never been able to establish your culture because of money. And I never understood that as a kid. It was like, how come these people can't help themselves? Like, why is this? And it's just like, well, light bulb goes off. You hear Alex Gladstein talk a couple times. He moderated a panel with three or four guests on there, and you hear about coming from North Korea. You had one gal, and then another gal down in I can't remember if her name's Frida or something like that. And it was mind blowing for me, where I just thought I could anybody that listens to this can understand Bitcoin, and it's um, but yeah, no,
Amazing, yeah.
pick some episodes and give the good ones out to your friends and family.
Exactly, and this like you have to. And I've been really passive now with my orange billing. I basically don't touch the Bitcoin topic if it does not come up naturally,
Hmm.
and that's like I'm aware that everybody sees me as the Bitcoin guy, and if
Right,
someone is interested, they come to me, and then I'm learning them all the stuff, and it works really fine. And I'm seeing now also an increased number a little bit, but not as I expected it, that people come to me. Mm, and I'm not like the one that brings Bitcoin up at every topic, which is really hard because Bitcoin is connected
right,
to so many or like all of the topics. And when you sit
right,
in public transport, when you sit with family members, when you sit with friends and families, and they're talking about inflation, when they're talking about the
right.
problems that's going on with you, talking about politics, and I just want to scream Bitcoin.
Right. No,
And
you do. I mean, it's even like you'll be talking over dinner with somebody and they'll start talking about like they heard about seed oils or, the
mm,
food, or they'll bring up insurance or medical. And you're just like, guys, and you're able to kind of come in and spit facts, and
mm,
they're like, how do you know all this stuff? Or, and I'm able to just to kind of dance around and talk about it, but they are kind of blown away. So I do think everybody is out there questioning, things in their own way, but just still haven't just grasped it.
yeah. What would you say is like your percentage on a Bitcoin standard? Like, I think we all are like in kind of a trying to get to a Bitcoin standard where we like only live on Bitcoin, only have Bitcoin, spending Bitcoin, but it's not as easy at some points because yeah, we're living also in the fiat system, so we cannot just switch completely to Bitcoin. Like, what would you say? What elements of a Bitcoin standard you already adopted in your life?
Uh, when I don't like exercising, okay? and it's just because I have a bitch voice in my head that just says, you can do it tomorrow. And, but it does, it reminds you, you got one life to live here, take care of it. Then that breaks down to food. Uh, you can't just stick anything in. Yeah, it tastes good. I mean, it is. It's awesome. I love Doritos. I mean, I just go down the list of food, and it is. You kind of sit there, and it makes you think, like, well, this is not good. This isn't my kids should. If my kids shouldn't be eating this, and you just I remember the moms way back when that would be like, we have no sugar in our house. We have sugar-free stuff. And it'd be like, come over to my house. You can have whatever you want. We got full sugar, at my house. But it's, as far as like the Bitcoin standard on, monetarily, I mean, I would love to be living on it 100%. I mean, I really would. And I think we will at some point here sooner than later. And I mean, you're starting to see all the different conversations that people are having about, well, I got this Bitcoin. How am I going to use it without spending it? So we're going to start seeing, lending, and how does that, prop up? You're going to start, it's just, you're going to start seeing more and more of that. But I'd like to be, in my mind, I'm living 100% Bitcoin standard. But I know we're not there. I mean, I go to bed, more bullish than I was yesterday. I really do. And, wake up in the morning excited and, just, I always think like, how is this thing going to break? Like, can it break? And again, you can't find anything. And you're just like, well, I'm more bullish today than I was yesterday.
Definitely, and it's interesting how we get into Bitcoin and Bitcoin more and more. It's like how the podcast basically came to be, because I didn't want to talk about Bitcoin too much in my friends and family circle, and then I was like searching an outlet for Twitter. Then
Right.
all of a sudden, I'm starting to talk a lot with Bitcoiners.
I just can't believe that we get to do this, and we get to witness this front row. And
Mm.
we get to watch this change. And it is going to be, there's going to be some tough times. There's going to be the good, the bad, and the ugly. But it will be not something that we just read about. And these people that read about this 50 years from now won't. I mean, they'll be able to think about it, but they will not have that same perspective that you and I have, because we've lived in both worlds. And it's like back to life before cell phone, internet. There's not going to be people that understand that, but it was much different before. And you've just seen the changes and how that's come about. And I mean, I was talking with a buddy, and he's the one that in 1994 I was down at BitBlock Boom, and he met me down there, and we were just talking about the old days, and we were graduating high school, and it was 94, and he was like the first kid to have internet, and he's like, and I'm
Mm.
like, what the hell's the internet? Like, tell me about this. And you couldn't explain it. You just everybody's trying to talk about it and couldn't explain it. But now that you've done it, it seems so simple. Um, and so that's what I'm excited for, is just that we get to actually experience this and, have touched both sides, of the line of the sand there.
Definitely, and it's interesting because Bitcoin is actually probably, for me, in my opinion, the biggest revolution that's going on right now. And we are right now seeing it evolving. Like, we're still so early to see
Yep.
Bitcoin growing from like 2%, 1% adoption rate to like 50, 70, 80,
Right.
100% adoption rate eventually, if it becomes the base layer of our financial and monetary system, which is crazy to live through. And that's, yeah, as I said before, that's basically the premise of this podcast. I want to just document the whole thing and talk with everyone that calls himself a Bitcoiner. And I'm saying
Yeah.
crazy journey.
Well,
Um,
just think about all the things you never questioned before. Like, I never questioned like my checking account. I just was like, well, this is, you open a checking account. This is just how, I don't know how it works. I don't care how it works. I just want to send a check off. Well, now it's just, I think people, on their journey, they question all those kind of things, and they'll, anyways, yeah, they need to start questioning more and more.
Yeah, critical thinking is something really important that we need to enhance in our society. Hopefully,
Yeah.
Bitcoin does that. Um, I'm always speaking with a lot of Bitcoiners, and the thing that I noticed that Bitcoiners are extremely learning. They're extremely curious about stuff. They are even beyond Bitcoin with food and everything going on, and even like beyond like all the imagine it. They are just like super curious people that want to question everything and ask everything what's actually doing that. They also want to get to bottom of things. So it kind of got to my new end routine where I'm asking before the actual end routine, what are you currently studying that's not Bitcoin? Like, what are you passionate about, like right now, and studying and learning about? Where is your like time, your learning time spent when it's not about Bitcoin, or is it just Bitcoin right now?
It really is, well, you have Bitcoin, and then I'd like to find a spot for myself in Bitcoin. I mean, you can't help but just get to a point where, you go to these conferences, and I went there first just to validate, and then next you see like, wow, I'm in this. These people are one, they come from all over the world. It's not just the United States. And then two, you quickly realize you're dealing with some of the smartest people in the world. And you can't help but be jacked up to say like, well, how am I going to fit in this space? Like, I want to do something in this space. And you see these companies and meet these, founders. I mean, and just kind of the whole platform of these people that are actually building something. So where I sit here and go like, oh, I'm such a Bitcoin bull. Well, they're 5 years in front of me, and they're done talking about it. They're going and building something on it, and that's the most impressive. So me, like, I sit here and it's like keep studying Bitcoin, but I'm also just sitting there. It's like, well, how does Bitcoin transfer into this? Like we were talking about, well, real estate. Well, how does that work into, real estate? How does that work into lending? How does that work into, escrow? How does that work into just transactions? Not exchange, but transactions. And you just kind of go down the line, and I just, you look at all the, services that I used to do for in real estate, and you're just like, well, okay, how do the institutions get into Bitcoin and own real estate and refine it? And how do they, the property managers, start taking, did they start accepting money in Bitcoin? And I don't know. It's just, I'm the coolest part about it is we're still so early that if you have an entrepreneurial spirit, you're going to just go do it. Because there's not those,
Mm.
it's not like, well, I can get a job here, here, and here. Well, yes, there's the new companies that you can get hired on, but it really pushes you towards go create something, go do something. And that's what's really, like I said, I just got back from BitBlock Boom, and you meet some fascinating people there and what they're creating. And they are the smartest people in the room. And you just like, wow, I'm so happy to be a part of this group. And so
Yeah.
I don't know a ton of, there's, and you meet some guys that are super technical and gals that are super technical. And then you just, meet some of these people that are more philosophic, and it's awesome. I mean, so I'm trying to find my place in it.
Amazing, and you're also involved with investing in Bitcoin companies that I heard. What are you
That,
doing there?
that's awesome. I mean, I just, I got to meet, Mike Jarmuz of Lightning Ventures in 22. And again, I just still was just kind of validating my Bitcoin conviction. And, he's a venture capitalist, puts these groups together to invest in these companies. And, I was like, I'm just going to focus on Bitcoin. And then you start looking at some of these companies that are being built on it from, Crowd Health, Thunder Games, IBX, Cloaked Wireless, things like that. And you're just like, holy shit. And then I started sitting there going, well, I want to do some mining, and I'm just going to go figure this out on my own. And I had a chance meeting with Bob Burnett from barefoot mining after I'd heard him on a podcast with the Bitcoin Matrix, uh, Cedric Youngelman, and I was like, so I did. I emailed him and said, hey, can we meet? And he was gracious enough to do that. And so then I started mining with him, and it was truly more. I don't. Um, it was truly just to help me understand and get, more well-rounded in the space. And then that relationship, I mean, it's just like in life, where does the next, where do all relationships lead to? It's like, and if you're a good person, good, you just keep finding good people. And Bob is one of those guys. I mean, he's about 10 years older than me, maybe 11 years older than me, really well spoken, very technical, has a great, fiat resume, but just, um, so anyways, he then introduces me to, Ocean, uh, the mining pool. And it's like, well, and I'm still just learning about, okay, now how does a mining pool work and that? And, um, it's been a lot of fun. I mean, and I was telling my wife, I went down to South Carolina for the Ocean kickoff, back in November 30th of like, 23. And she's like, well, what happens if this doesn't work out? And I just said, well, that was the best money I could have ever spent on education. And I don't really care. I mean, it's like these guys are just, rocket scientists, smart. And then you have, and I'm not a big fanboy or anything of Jack Dorsey or any of these other guys. I respect everybody, but it was amazing just to see him show up, see all these other, top notch, Bitcoiners that have these other, venture capital funds. And there really wasn't a ton of, a massive group. It was a pretty small group. And I couldn't believe, I was like, what the hell, how the hell did I get here? And I hope people don't ask me any questions. I'll just smile and sounds good.
I
But
mean, that
anyway, so yeah, so I would love to, keep investing in companies, but I want to be a part of a company. I want to create something. So I'm figuring that out, and I believe I will at some point here soon.
amazing, and I'm pumped to see what you're doing, and maybe we can get you back on in half a year, and see what you did in the Bitcoin community.
Perfect. Well,
But
right on.
perfect. Then we're coming now to the end routine where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest. So this is the only question I cannot control, unfortunately. Sometimes it's a fun one, sometimes a good one, sometimes it's
Okay.
a interesting one. And the question from the previous guest is for you: how long before your government tries to ban or limits on ramps in a major way?
Oh man. Well, I mean, I've been following along, Caitlin Long's journey with Bitcoin and talking about, choke point 2.0. And it's I I don't know. I think they're constantly. I don't know if this can answer your question. I think they're constantly. I think you have a group that just is smart enough to say, shit, why find it? Join it. This is gonna win regardless. And then you have these other people that are so on the tit, like an Elizabeth Warren, and it's just like, hey, lady, you got kids. I mean, think about your kids, your grandkids, and their kids. You're so selfish, and so I still can't believe that that's going on. But I think from here out, and I think if this baby really ramps up, because that's the first thing they're going to see is numbers. Um, I think could be any day. I mean, really. I mean, I think they're sitting there trying to figure out how to keep this big old, Ponzi scheme up. I mean, I look at it as, I tell my kids it's like a big, I don't know if you ever played Jenga where you're
Hmm.
stacking blocks. And it's just like, I can't believe that no one else can see this, that we're going to go have all this money out here and we have to turn all these levers just to try to keep that thing from falling over. And it's like, at some point, hey, this thing's coming down. So, and they're like, part of their deal before it falls is they're going to try to take us down too. So I don't know, but I'd say now they're coming after us now.
I mean, they kind of started to attack Bitcoin in 2013 with China. So like they are doing it in a long time, and yeah, I think game theory works for us.
I always wonder about that. Just like, where they have all this stuff that Bitcoin that they got from the Silk Road, like, hey, are they trying to throw the scent off by saying, hey, we got to sell this stuff? And they're, actually in the, just to try to say, hey, we don't support it. And in the background, that they're purchasing it. I don't know. But, anyways,
Yeah, it will be interesting to see the game theory playing out. Thank you, Tony, for being on. It was a real pleasure to talking with you. You're one of the great minds in Bitcoin that I did not knew about before the podcast, and that's why I'm loving it to have so many different minds in Bitcoin on the podcast and seeing them how they evolve and do stuff. Before I let you go, is there anything you want to shout out? Is there anything you want to promote, or other question, how can people get in touch with you?
I'm on Twitter. It's Tony Miltenberg one. Um, but I was gonna, compliment you. I mean, just like I'd said before, I mean, you had just a bunch of doers and you could have just thought about doing a podcast, but it does take balls to just get up and say, hey, I'm just gonna go do this, whatever it is.
Mm.
So congrats, man. I mean, I didn't realize that we were on episode 97 and, when I first reached out to you, I was like, yeah, this guy's gonna do 100 of these things. That's awesome. So you're almost there.
Yes, it will be a really a long ride to 300 this year, but I'm doing every day now, so I could even reach like 320 or something like that,
Oh, wow.
because I'm doing it every day, and I think I switched to daily in like January or February and did like five times before that also. So it will be a really really cool time, and I hope to get Michael Saylor on for the 300th.
That'd be
And
cool.
after that, I want to make a big compilation with all the guests, like a small documentary with like, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes where there's like the biggest things. But this is future stuff that will probably come out
Right.
in the beginning next year.
Yeah, I think you'd be able to get Michael Saylor on. I think, you do 300, 299 episodes. There's going to be bound to be some people that have connections to him to say,
Mm.
hey, get on this episode. So I think you'll be successful there. But I was just going to end and just say, what really helped me is you kind of get in your own little echo chamber world. Um, Make sure to get out, meet people that are, like-minded, and you go to these Bitcoin meetups. And, sometimes you meet you just meet so many like-minded people there, but the conferences, I can't say enough about that because your mind will be blown. And mine
Mm.
was, and it always continuously is just to see, just the rock star people that are in this space, just very, very solid human beings.
I think this is the perfect point where I can mention that the Bitcoin Prague conference is really soon, and like there's a code down below with code Robin, and you can get a 10% discount. And this is why I also like I try to get strategic with my partners in the podcast. And Bitcoin Prague was something that just came up like a few weeks ago, because I talked with Matthias, the co-founder of it, and I was like, yeah, I want to partner with you because last year I was there and it totally changed my life. Actually, like this
Right.
is Bitcoin Prague conference last year with like, I don't know, 7 or 6,000 people, was inspiring me to do more in Bitcoin. And that's why I'm now not having a day job. That's why I'm now not having the fear job and being really solely in Bitcoin and working with amazing Bitcoin companies. So of course I want to support that and want to make
Right.
advertisement for them. And yeah, want to meet as many of the podcast listeners and podcast guests and people involved in the podcast in Prague. And I might also come to America. That's not sure in July to the Nashville conference, and I'm not 100% sure. But if I go there, I'll definitely contact all the Americans there.
No, you'll be blown away. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that, don't like that conference just but at the same time, if that would be a great one for you to go to and just, don't mind all the shitcoinery that they might be having there or whatnot. But it's a great one because you're gonna find some like I said, just some solid people.
That's amazing, and it's a I think an event where you also have to be there at least once or twice. And this is also like what I like really about Bitcoin Prague. There's like zero shitcoin arena. There's like just Bitcoin. Like
Right.
there's the high signal. I don't know, what did you wear last year there? Did you plan to go here this year?
To the Nashville one.
Nashville
To
and or Prague, yes.
I'm not. I You see, I got to get my wife on board with me. She wouldn't let me just go to Prague by myself. That would be a problem. But I am this year. I took my kids down with me and my wife down to Nashville. I can't remember. Maybe it was Bitcoin Magazine 2 years ago had an event, and so I was like, you know what? Never been to Nashville. Let's take the kids. It's a 10-hour drive. So we jumped in the car, went down there, and it was awesome. So I'm taking the kids again to this actual conference, and they're like, "Dad, what?" And I'm like, "No, you're gonna love it. It's not like, hey, you're gonna be sitting in these hearing these speakers. Yeah, we'll hit a couple of key ones, but I just want them to go around there's a big like the mall, and you just see all the companies, the
Mhm.
artists, the products that are being built on this. And I want everybody to see like, hey, this is a real deal. And I mean, and there's just a massive amount of people down there. And I imagine this year will be, since it's his first year in Nashville, they'll probably really do it up.
Definitely, definitely, yeah. Then thanks again for being on. Let's make the end
Okay.
routine.
Yep.
Really,
Well, hey, thank you very much. You have a great rest of the day. Rob, it was
probably.
great meeting you.
Bye bye.
You take care.